Dema Jumden Dijeju. Rajumba Yanda was Obasanya Ribano Shazum. The Oresha Jidin, Jubon de Vakano. Lana Meba Lada Min on Jedama Sanjay. Pejawa Jaja should I just Jawa Dama Jumden Dijeju. Rajumba Yanda was Obasanya Ribano Shazum. The Oresha Jidin, Jubon de Vakano. Lama Meba Lada Min on Jedama Sanjay. Benjawa Shaja Dobala Satano Judo. Dama Jumden Dijeju Dajuma Yanda. Rivadan Shazon Demban, the Oreshavan Jedin, Jubun, Kalo Juvalana Meba Hadan Benan Sanjay Jumden. Benjawa Shaja Dobala Sat. Should I just Kanze Kanyan Sajan den Alcomba de Manin Jedin den Tezekava Jona Chan Hatem, Namda Kunga Chan. Ishe Jazo Sejan Humoda Tawan Jedin Son. Momo Chunye Jona Chan Hatem, Senjon de Majimen. Sendon Tawa Jona Chan Hatem, the Jona Sevasum. Yame Jinjin Jona Chan Hatem, Gombo to Jen, Tunje Jimbe. Sonomin de Jazu Shin, the Shin Jana Chan Hatem, Taben de Jato. Giving as one letter, Jidu, the Lamacho, Washington Jona Chan. Chene Treva Lanya de Labatan, rather than Jinga. Gende Lanya Charles, the Quachian, Mijajin, Gawapu, Rangasin, and Yozo, the Tenant Sanja, Kamara, Meta, Jumasa. Milan Lord Agenda, when the gentleman that are Sonamandi, and Tunjez. Covadom Najin, rather than Gadan, Shiva Loki, Siva Solent, or one driver.
To the teacher, the blessed one, the one God beyond, the foe destroyer, completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and humans, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the blessed one, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the teacher, the blessed one, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and humans, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the blessed one, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the teacher, the blessed one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and humans, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the blessed one, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. When, O supreme among humans, you were born on this earth, you paced out 7 strides and said, I am supreme in this world. To you who were wise then, I prostrate, with pure bodies, forms supremely pure, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain, fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner of the best, to you I prostrate, with the supreme signs, face like spotless moon, color like gold, to you I prostrate. You are immaculate, the 3 worlds are not, incomparably wise one, to you I prostrate. The Savior having great compassion, the teacher having all understanding, the field of merit with qualities like a vast ocean. To you, the one gone to thusness, I prostrate. The purity which makes one free from attachment, the virtue which frees one from the lower realms, the one path, the sublime pure reality, to that Dharma which pacifies, I prostrate. Those who are liberated and also show the path to liberation, the holy field qualified with realizations, who were devoted to the moral precepts. To you, the sublime community contending virtue, I prostrate. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a mirage, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of double bubble, a dream, a flash of light, a cloud. See conditioned things as such. Through these merits, may sentient beings attain the rank of all seeing, subdue all faults, and be delivered from the ocean of suffering, of aging, sickness, and death.
Sanje Jala Zoje Jala Ma Chaju Bado Dane Jadu Dage Jeso Jebe Sonam Je Dola Benje Sanje Dubai Sanje Jala Zoje Jala Ma Chaju Bado Dane Jadu Dage Jeso Jebe Sonam Je Dola Benje Sanje Dubai Sanje Jala Zoje Jala Ma Chaju Bado Dane Jadu Dage Jeso Jebe Sonam Je Dola Benje Sanje Dubai
I go for refuge, hell and mind, to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by practicing giving and the other perfections, may I quickly attain the state of Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. I go for refuge in Talim land, to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by practicing giving and the other perfections, may I quickly attain the state of Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. I go for refuge in Talim land, to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by practicing giving and the other perfections, may I quickly attain the state of Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings.
Tamje Jemba La Cha Zemon De La Sanje Jum Den De and the Dishin Shaman Tajumba Yang Riba Na Shazun Demba De Wa Shaman Jiden Jemba Jivan De Kama Jivan Lana Meba Tata Mena Jeto Sanje Jum Den De So and Dishin Sheva Den Sonanda Ge Jutu Bangi Vesawan Chumisa Subera Do Jemba Sonam Jedere Nam Jeshi Beja Samanam Jedere Chena Jemba Doji Juyu Remba Tona Midimba Meba Debe Meba Nala Mamraka Shero Sejim Tona Seba Meba Sinjatam Jedemba Chaju Semba Java Pabe Kazana Jevo Yangele Devo Tonjendo Joana Jetebe Sheba Boba Sanje Sona Brata Yanyamba Gujeta Chomish Kutumba Meba Devata Soda Genyama Someva Dada Mareva Dunyala Nabajo Pumota Nabajo Kamata Gejana Mandaba Devana Shendo Jeva Yoto Dovata Sivan Chu Jean Zoba Devada Majumba Dada Sanje Jum Deni Jema Neva Yamena Devana Yana Vanya Dana Deva Sinjatam Jela Ziva Sala Shuba Dean the Sanje Jum Deni Kuchiven Yanda Vana Mosova Tamation Tomangeva Padogeva Tamangeva Sindrusam Mandeba Yozo Zoba Yozo Taba Yozo Chawa Yanta Demba Tucheva Meba They don't want to do you, but Kevin just so long as Jim then they get over so much on the one that water. Yavajo was over Janjo, the Drovach will be the permission, the water them, but them are you, but you were Temajim, then the Lavashu, Rivaju, Boju, the Mashu, Temajim, Temajim, you were charged of a visit, you were son of the pages. Yes, Joan Jimena, Kundo Jimena, you were Kangi over the Jano, woman, but yet was the Yishinya and make a payment on the chart. I think page 338. Express when a transformation of the base into resultant stage has not yet been achieved. The transformation of the base into the resultant stage has not been achieved. The consciousness with a separate reality can be appearing object of another consciousness. Then the assertions the consciousness only will be undermined. So the mind only, the idea of the mind only means object and consciousness. So the consciousness only true exists. Objects are the reflection of the consciousness. So consciousness, so the transformation of the stage into the resultant stage has yet not yet been achieved means until you got enlightened. Until you got enlightened, the consciousness with separate reality can be appearing object of another consciousness. So the one consciousness, like air consciousness, cannot perceive the eye consciousness. Eye consciousness, is not going to perceive the air consciousness or the eye consciousness. The first eye consciousness, the second moment of eye consciousness. Second moment's eye consciousness does not perceive the first eye consciousness. Right? So the mind, until enlightenment, when you achieve enlightenment, and one consciousness can perceive every phenomenon. Right? So now the point of the mind only is mind only means object and the consciousness. You have to choose one is truly exists, another is not truly exists. So then they choose the consciousness is the only one that truly exists, and the objects are just reflects. It emerge from the consciousness. It is not separate from the consciousness. So that is the idea of the consciousness. So because previously there is given options like if there is the reflexive awareness, self-knower of the consciousness, and then say, is consciousness, do you perceive itself, or consciousness do not perceive itself? It has to be perceived by another consciousness. So then, in the Prasanga school and others, like Baba Vivek, they don't accept this reflexive awareness. They don't agree on that. So this is why I say consciousness do not perceive itself, and consciousness also not perceived by another consciousness. But still, the consciousness, the experiencing object, by experiencing object, that establish the consciousness that exists. So you don't need another consciousness to prove the consciousness exists. The existing of consciousness is enough by experiencing the object.
Conventionally, the Prasangika and other schools accept, like from a conventional, just through words, reflexive awareness is acceptable, though, right? Like being able to say that you know that you are knowing something or know that you are experiencing something. Like,
no, here the term, the reflexive awareness, is studied from the mind-only school.
Okay.
So the mind-only school, their kind of assertion of the reflexive awareness is they think there's a separate consciousness attached with each consciousness.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's something like the CCTV with everything. So when this eye consciousness is looking at the color, this reflexive awareness is looking at the eye consciousness. So there is something, another consciousness, the reflexive awareness, that only perceive the consciousness, eye consciousness itself, not the color.
Right.
So it's kind of, there's a, what we call something that attached to the is primary consciousness.
Right. Okay.
So that is the terminology that kind of
right.
Yeah. So that the meaning of that is there's a separate consciousness perceiving only the consciousness itself, not the object.
Right. Okay.
So then the Prasangika school says, there is no such reflexive awareness because there's no need. When the time consciousness experience the taste, the experiencing the taste is the only evidence or only proof that can prove that time consciousness exists. I consciousness to be existing, the proof of that is it sees the color. Other than that, you don't need another consciousness to proving the I consciousness existing. So, so far the Chittamatras, there can be no such mode of apprehension whatsoever. So for Chittamatra, there can be no such mode of apprehension whatsoever. Thus, when Madhyamika utter the challenge, without observing it by cognitions, you cannot say it exists. Thus, when the Madhyamika utter challenge, without observing it by cognition, you cannot say it exists. Chitra, now this is what they think, right? Without observing it. So by observing color, you can understand the conscious, you can understand that the color exists. Color exists because it's observed with the eye consciousness. Now the second is, what is the proof of the eye consciousness exists? Who observe, who perceive that eye consciousness? So cognition, you cannot say it exists. Chittamatra might respond, yes, it is true that consciousness is not apprehended by a cognitions that has a different reality. So Chittamatra says, yes, you are true. The eye consciousness is not perceived by second eye consciousness or the ear consciousness, nose consciousness. But, so another reality, but there is the self-cognitions, the self-knowing. And it is this reflexive awareness alone that apprehends that, other power nature. And so other power nature means now saying that the other power nature is truly exists. So the proof of that is this reflexive awareness. So dependent nature does nature does exist, or other power nature does exist truly, because it is directly experienced, perceived by the reflexive awareness, with non-dualistically. When the reflexive awareness experience a reflexive awareness of the eye consciousness, experience the eye consciousness, it experiences non-dualistically. And the eye consciousness sees the color dualistically. So this is Minority school thinks that because the reflexive awareness, the perceiving and experiencing the cognitions or the eye consciousness non-dualistically, therefore eye consciousness the only thing that truly exists. Now, if the opponent offered this defense, the Madhyamika would respond, cognition that is aware of itself is not established. So that does not really proving, and then, eye consciousness has a self kind of quality of self-knowing. Self-knowing, cognition that aware of itself is not established. Yeah, you cannot establish that. To present briefly the sources for the opponent thesis, namely the Chittamatra view on the reflexive awareness. So, Blaze of the Reasoning, Toge Baba Big, says that Chittamatra assert that consciousness appears as a twofold. So twofold, assert the consciousness appears as a twofold, self-perceiving and object-perceiving. So that's very true. The Baba Vivek said, what I can understand the Chittamatra school is actually asserting that when I consciousness is actively, engaging, there's the two folds. One part of the I consciousness perceiving the color, that is the external reality, dualistic. And the second I consciousness perceiving itself is the reflexive awareness. So the I consciousness with twofold. One is looking at itself, one is looking at other. You never need eyeglasses. So it has that much power that it can see itself. So twofolds, self-perceiving object in the perceiving, is in the object perceiving. That dimension of the consciousness perceiving object assumes the aspect of external reality. The one dimension of its reaches is external reality. It sees the external, becoming the object of cognitions. Dimension of conscious perceiving object assume the aspect of the external reality, become an object of the cognition perceiving itself. So the Baba Vivek says, what I can see from your assertions, you're simply, claiming that, I consciousness, one single I consciousness has the two aspects. One sees the object external reality, one sees the subject itself, non-dualistically. Object of cognition itself. Responding to this thesis, the Baba Vivek writes. So the Baba Vivek says, what kind of mind is perceived apart from the perceiving object? So I think that includes everything that, So what is the proof of your I consciousness to be existing, other than it can see? So why you need to say my consciousness is my tongue consciousness is well functioning because it can taste. Being able to taste is the proof of a tongue consciousness existence. Why do you need the cognitions to the tongue consciousness to be existing? So what kind of mind perceived? This is reflexive awareness, apart from the perceiving object. So thus Baba Vivek says that he sees no cognitions, supposedly perceiving itself. So that is separate from the cognition of perceiving object. So the Baba Vivek says you don't have to claim there's a self-reflexive awareness. Just each consciousness is proven to you by experience, simply by it can engage an object. So that Chittamatra asserts the inward direct cognition that is free from all dualistic perceptions, and maintains this to be reflexive awareness in that it is self-cognizing. This said, it maintains there is no dualistic perceptions of knower and the known, the vice versa. The such cognitions in the commentary, So inward, Chittamatra assert the inward direct cognitions that is free of all dualistic perceptions. So again, there's a reflective awareness is inwardly perceiving the objects. Reflexive eye consciousness inwardly only, looking at the eye consciousness. So maintains this reflexive awareness in the dualistic perceptions. So first, in order to say that, to prove the I consciousness truly exists because it directly or non-dualistically perceiving the I consciousness by the reflexive awareness, first you have to prove that there is the reflexive awareness. So in the commentary on the differentiation of the true truth, when refuting the reflexive awareness, the cognitions emerge awareness that is itself empty of duality, and cognize that absence of duality. It cannot cognize that absence of duality. However, it is not itself empty of duality. Cognition emerges as awareness that is itself empty of the duality and cognize that absence of duality. So I think minority school, kind of minority school seeking for some another excuse, saying that, when the yogi meditate in the emptiness is phenomenon, and then they single-pointedly met in emptiness, and from the experience, what they can see is what they can see in that realization emptiness, they can only experience the consciousness other than there's total absence. So in the yogi practice, in the yogi practice, and eventually they can only experience the consciousness and not the object. Right? There's no object to apprehend or conceive or imagine, only the consciousness that left. So, and all the school says, yes, that's true. We can only experience in that direct perception and realization. Only there is only experience. Other than that, it's just a space. As the minority school says, you see now the yogi experienced that, which means if before you meditate, each consciousness is experienced by the reflexive awareness, how can this yogi end up in this seeing only consciousness? I think yogi, yoga. The yogi perceptions or yogi perception, yogi perception, right? The yogi perceptions is only experience. The consciousness means the experience the consciousness is not in that perception. There is no, you have already dismantled all the imputational factors, and you experience the absence of that, the negation element. So you are in that space. So in that space, you experience the consciousness. So there is no two things, It also understands the empty of truly existing with imputational factors, And, other than, this yogi wisdom, when it realized the empty of intrinsic nature of the imputation of factors. So that is the kind of, wisdom that only understands empty of the imputation of factors. Other than that, there is no consciousness to be perceived. So that's not true. When the tongue tastes the candy, tongue experience the kind of it also how's that? Yeah, it also perceives the taste of that. The taste of that is by the tongue consciousness. So the tongue consciousness to experiencing the taste. So the taste and the tongue consciousness is not different. So this is what the minor Prasangic school in the Prasangic school is saying, that you don't need. Baba Vivek also says that you don't need the third party to prove your consciousness to be existing, other than the consciousness is experienced the object. So the yogi perceptions, understanding the emptiness, you experience the consciousness is realizing it. So you don't need another consciousness to proving the experience exists. Yeah, it's kind of like when someone pinch you, you experience, right? Mm-hmm. So you don't need my experiences exist. Other than experiencing the being pinched. So when the Chittamata established that the other power nature to be devoid of the imputed natures, substantial duality of the subject and object. When the Chittamata established the other power nature, the devoid of imputed natures, or the empty of the dualistic of subject and object, if cognitions, the other power nature is the first affirmed by the reflexive awareness free of dualistic perceptions, then such a base could be realized in terms of the absence of subject and object duality. If, on the other hand, such a base is not first established by the reflexive awareness, then one cannot take it as the basis and establish it as empty of the imputed natures. So this is what Chittamata says. Hence, the present the argument that according to you, the Chittamata, other power nature must be established by its evidence, which is the non-dual reflexive awareness. However, the reflexive awareness remain unestablished. Yeah, the minor school. Yeah.
The mind-only school way of presenting the reasoning is like, this, like a Senate argument, So they talk, they kind of trying to, connect many dots, There's no valid reasoning, but they bring many dots kind of lined up. And then, it can, some people can say, oh, that makes sense, So,
So, Geshe-la, when they're saying here, dependent nature is like our other power nature is cause and effect, right?
yeah, I'm saying, they keep saying the translations, saying every time the dependent natures. So dependent, I think, instead of dependent, other power natures, because the Prasangika school, refuting is the other power nature.
Yeah.
The Prasangika do not refute the dependent nature.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Other power nature. There's nothing born from other.
Right.
So the minority school keeps saying this. Everything is other power natures.
Right.
Everything that is dependent arising is other power natures.
Mm-hmm.
For the minority school, there's no difference. The dependent nature in other power natures. In the Prasangika school, there's a big difference.
Right.
So the translator, they don't really see that kind of the significance of this,
Because other power nature is specifically relating to like the mind basis of all.
Yeah.
Dependent nature, Prasangika is like, no, that's like cause and effect.
Yeah, dependent nature, everything is a dependent nature.
Right.
Yeah, so this kind of a little bit, when children establish the dependent other power nature to be devoid of imputed natures, substance, if cognition dependent nature is first formed by, now this kind of minority school is saying that, in minority school, according to minority school, this is, so, through the yogic meditations, yogic wisdoms, finally, what they can, at the point of the end, what they can experience in only consciousness, So meditating, and at the end, the point, what you have really got, what you have gotten to be experienced is only the consciousness at the end. So now, because of that, if from the beginning there is non-dualistic, is not there, there's no such consciousness experiencing the non-dualistic, and how can yogi end up in seeing only consciousness? Yeah, for me, it's like, people saying that, some who believe in the creator, they says, there's when you look at the people, there's many colors, many sizes, many languages, many cultures. If there is one who create this thing, if there's no creator, how can there be many? There's some mountains, some small mountains, some they're flat, somehow all the mountains, So the varieties of the shape and the design, the colors, so there must be, without creating it, how can there be many? Diversity is because of, something has created. So that proves there is the creator. And the reason is because there's many, the varieties in the form, in the color, and shapes. And then another reason is, this is like summer, right? Summer, autumn, right? In winters, there's each kind of, these seasons happening in orderly, and then night and day and the next day, just there's the sequence order. So if everything is orderly happening, orderly functioning, that proves there is one creator. And then we say, Dharmakirti says, that its creator is also functioning sequence orderly. He is not in a snap, he creates everything. If he is doing one by one, which means the creator must have another creator to create him. So, so there is something behind him. Say, you do this, like he's the contractor now. He's so he got a budget from another content creator. So the similar, the binaural school was saying that at the end, yogi experience that only the consciousness. There is no such thing, object. So the only consciousness is remain true. You have affirmed that the consciousness and the experiences exist. So which means from the beginning, you have aware of this emptiness. There must be the consciousness that is really experienced, but you are not convinced, but there is experiencing. So which means that only, you cannot say the I consciousness has the experience of the non-dualistic, because I consciousness experience the dualistic. So the other than I consciousness, there's a reflexive awareness that already experience non-dualistic. So that is the basis, and that base was so convinced to the mind through the yogi experience. Yeah, so, and then all the minority school says, amen, we are 100% up behind you. So that's kind of things they're saying. However, the reflexive awareness remain unestablished. So, whatever you say is still, reflexive awareness is unestablished. You haven't proved yet. The consciousness at the end, yogi experience, only experience, there is no dualistic. That's not going to prove there is this reflexive awareness. So some claim that in refuting this kind of reflexive awareness, some people, maybe follow or claim that they are Prasangika school. So they also follow the rejecting the reflexive awareness. And they think, Prasangika school is not accepting the reflexive awareness, and also they refute yogic reflexive gnosis, wherein such in the perceived within such unique individual experience. They say, Prasangika school not only rejecting this reflexive awareness, they're also rejecting a yogic experience of non-dualistic. So that is also incorrect. And that he is also rejecting the reflexivity, right? Mm-hmm. In the conventional sense, indicate when a person utters the statements such as, I am aware of myself.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right.
So that is what says, that are simply foolish talk.
Okay, good to know.
I know myself, so be yourself. So almost like that is not talking about the reflexive awareness. So there's simply foolish talk. Rejecting the opponent's responds that reflexive awareness is indeed tenable. Rejecting opponents respond that reflexive awareness is indeed tenable. So this has two parts, presenting the opponent's positions and refuting that positions. So now the minority school have failed to prove the reflexive awareness or self-knower, the consciousness, self-knower consciousness, because they cannot prove by the yogi experience at the end, it only experience the consciousness. So that is, is a direct realization emptiness when in the experience, it only experiences the experience. Because the object has already, how say, negated. By negating the object, the experience only experience. That is not going to prove. Each consciousness has their own reflexive, the separate cognition, the cognizing subject. And the Baba Vivek says, you don't need I consciousness to prove by another consciousness. I consciousness proving to be existing by seeing the color. Like air consciousness proving it to be existing by hearing the sound. So you don't need another, other than the sound, being able to hear sound, you don't need another evidence to prove that you have air consciousness. So when they all failed, and then so now it's saying, presenting the opponents the positions. Now we ask, what is the real kind of the logic that you think there is a reflexive awareness? Subscribing to the Suthantika view. Suthantika also believe the self-knowing consciousness. Some view, some that is Chitramata present the following to the proof: reflexive awareness, the instant, what's that? Instant.
Or
Huh?
the instant of flame.
Flame appears. Instant of flame. Yeah. Instant a flame appears. It's simultaneously illuminates the board itself as well as object, such as vase, table, right? So it does not eliminate these two, like itself and other, sequentially, right? Sequentially. Similarly, when one utters the word vase, it engenders, right? Awareness of the both sound of the word and the vase. That is the referent of that word. The consciousness too, when it arises, the aware of the both itself as well as the object. It does not become the aware of the two in sequence. Therefore, the reflexive awareness is something that definitely exists. So this you can say, from from one evidence, it can prove, it can reflect in your mind as it can two function. Like when you touch the table, by touching the table, you can understand. There's the experience of the kind of, textures of the table, and you also understand that you are touching the table. So that's the minority school. They're saying this is kind of thing. So furthermore, there is when they use the instant flame appears, it simultaneously illuminate both itself as well as the object, such as vase. So if the light, when the butter lamp illuminate itself and other, so illuminate means it reveals, it clear to you. So the both itself and others. If the one lamp can do that, and the darkness can hide itself. The Prasanga school, If the light can illuminate itself, reveal itself, the darkness also can hide itself. Right? Because if the lamp has the power or it has the activity to reveal, by its own light, and the darkness should have the potential to hide itself. If the darkness is not hiding itself, why the light is illuminating itself? So light is proving to be illuminating by illuminating other than itself, like a vase and the table and the windows, right? So in the Prasanga school, so this is not really, logical thinking. So darkness is the most easiest, obvious things to see, The furthermore, they assert even those we do not yet accept the reflexive awareness will have no choice but to admit it exists. So there's the quite, coming on. For if one does not accept it, there can be no, subsequent recollections. That is the one of the reasons, subsequent recollection of the object in terms of I have seen this, or the recollection of the subjective experience of the seeing that object in terms of I have seen this. So why is this so? It is impossible to have recollection of something that has not been experienced. So remembering is thus a subjective experience. Remembering is the subjective experience that has its object something that was previously experienced. According to you, who deny the reflexive awareness, they say, since the previous cognition, such as the perception of the blue object, was never experienced in its own time, there can be no subsequent recollection of it. I think same, when the Baba Vivek and Chandakiri are all listening, they may fall asleep. So, these minor schools, how many you defeat, they don't have shame. They just come out again and again. So the Baba Vivek says, you don't need the subject to prove. You don't need, separate evidence to proving the subject to be existing. Its subject is being proving to be existing by experiencing the object. So that I think that is enough to to clear away all these ambiguities. So this argument seeks to prove the sometimes it's not really it has its own profundity in there. Say Prasangika and Baba Vivek, when you see the color, green color with eye consciousness, do you experience the eye consciousness? We say, the experiencing of the green is so obvious to me that I don't need any other evidence to prove that I am experiencing the green. So when you experience the green is the evidence, right? So, and the mindfulness school says, without experiencing by another consciousness, you are experiencing the green, you cannot remember that I have experienced the green. So anything that you remember means previously you must have experienced that. And something that previously you haven't experienced, you cannot have recollection of it. But you cannot have recollection of it. So therefore, when you experience the green, you experience the green and you experience the experiencing. Yeah, sometimes I feel like, in our brain, there's the, what do you call it? The nerves, the channels, what do you call it? The brain,
what are they called? Synapses or
the many
connections.
the connection, neurons, right? So, the brain neurons, when the eye consciousness is seeing, you cannot, I think it is impossible that one of the neurons is actively functioning with eye consciousness without help of other neurons.
Mm-hmm.
There is no independent neurons in there. One channel is, let me function.
Right.
You just rest.
Right.
So every kind of neurons is the function at the time, right? So there is no independent, there is no self-functioning. There's no one is in the center, right? So with the one neuron is a functioning, experience the green color. Other neurons is also functioning at the same time, to kind of to help this neuron to be experiencing. So when you experience the green, when you see the green, that really experience the green is the condition that you can have later on. You can have a recollection of, I have experienced that green. So the recollection of the experiencing green is conditioned by the experiencing the green color. So the proof of the existing of the prior experience of the perceiving the blue object by using its subsequent recollection as the logical reason. Otherwise, if the argument were formulated as so there exists for the purest perceptions of the blue object a reflexive awareness that experience it. No suitable example could be found that, no suitable example could be found that could be established for the other party in the debate, so they don't formulate the proof of statement that that way. Yeah. Once established that there is the subjective experience of the perceiving the blue object, then such an experience can be determined to be either self-cognizing or cognitions by others. The first alternative is not acceptable to you who reject self-cognitions, while the second is something that our standpoint has ruled out. Which means that for you, even the experience itself would become the impossible. So this is how Chitramata argues against their opponent, in fact. So this is their best argument to prove the reflexive awareness. To continue, what is now it is incorrect to assert that the previous perceptions of blue object is experienced by some separate cognitions. If such were the case, true problematic and consequences would follow. First, there would be the problem of infinite regress. So if each consciousness, to be existing, and it has to be experienced by another consciousness, and the regress, infinite regress. I consciousness to recall that I have seen it, and that has to be proven by another consciousness. That I consciousness proving that knowing I consciousness by another consciousness, then it's infinite regress, right? So then when this has, when this says, oh, the consciousness experience another consciousness is not making sense, it's not tenable. Now we go back to the consciousness experience by itself. So, and then the consciousness is not experiencing by itself as two things. The Prasangika school, Baba Vivek, and they always say, consciousness not experiencing it by itself. Consciousness experience is the condition that you can have later on the recollection of that experience. And the minority school says, oh, the by itself means not the very I consciousness is seeing itself. So it has separate, but it's the one nature, something attached to that very I consciousness, and with a separate function, self-reflexive awareness. There is no other consciousness, and it is not itself. So it's kind of they don't have really kind of the powerful reasoning to prove it. So they know how to convince to you, by touching on the other many things. They're trying to sell it to you. I think other than my, Prasangika school, everybody buys that, So yeah, For if the cognition explicitly perceiving a blue object is established by another subsequent cognition, the question arises, does that cognition require another separate cognition as it is cognizer, as its cognizer? If it does not, then the previous cognition too should not be require this subsequent cognizer. So then, in the Prasangika school, in the medieval autonomous school, and they says, your experience is the proof, is the condition that brings the recollection of it. So you don't need experiencer of experience. So now another point is why they, insist, saying there's a reflexive awareness. Why they kind of trying, constantly insisting that there's a reflexive awareness. So the minority school, they are very afraid of following denialistic. They also know the Prasangika school, so there's nothing intrinsic. They don't want to go there, So, and they also kind of understand this object that you see with your eye and ear and nose and the tongue and the mind. So those objects, they pretty understand they're not really, there's no certainty. If those objects are never true as it appears. So that part, the minority school, we can understand there is, unreal illusion like there is. But if I go with the consciousness as illusion, unreal, then I have no real. There's no real path to liberation. There is no real Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. So they're really kind of, trying to push them, push them to the safe place. So they only says, the things that you see, things that you see in your, sixth consciousness, the objects. So we can say there are many things that's not true as it appears. But the seer, the experiencer, must be truly exist. So from the experiencer is the one seeking for the liberations, enlightenment. So the enlightenment is truly exists, liberation is truly exists, path that lead to the liberation is truly exist. And then there is a true suffering, and there's true the cessation of the suffering. So minority school very, very kind of cautious and very, they think, if you really say or can logically prove there's nothing that intrinsically truly exists, that means you have annihilated every existing. You have no such reality to you. So that's why they have to, this is the safest place. The consciousness is the truly exists. For that reason, they says, the consciousness, the only thing that experienced by the reflexive awareness, directly, non-dualistically experiencing, that is only true. Anything that you see the dualistically are unreal. So they have to fake, they have to make it up. The reflexive awareness is the proof of the consciousness truly exists. But they cannot really assert the reflexive awareness, each of the reflexive awareness of each of the consciousness, perceiving or realizing it is, non-dualistic. They say it experienced non-dualistically. So that's very kind of, one thing, they are very kind of, very genuine and very serious in seeking for the liberations. And so, an other side of that is there's the fear. If they really go like Prasangika school, they may fall in nihilism. So they want to, so in the sutra, the Papakunjo Buddha, so there's one sutra Buddha mentioned that, so all this path of liberation, enlightenment. So I have mentioned, I have logically proved, but I did not teach, when it comes to overcoming anger and attachment, I did not, mention that, in order for overcoming attachment, you have to overcome the object that you attached. That is not my meaning. When you're overcoming anger, we are not saying overcome the object that you are angry with. So, or we are not saying, but I did not say you have to abandon the person you are angry with. So simply is overcoming anger. And then when these, and about the overcoming or kind of, the applying the antidote for the anger. And then again, I did not really teach. There's the one person and separate from anger. There is no person separate, different from anger. There's no person different from the path, the applying antidote, of the anger. So it's the same thing that, when Buddha says nothing truly exists, Buddha did not say only the objects not truly exist, subjects that truly exist. In the Heart Sutra, even the five aggregates, the empty intrinsic existence. So I think, even in the mundanes, we have this kind of, that kind of there is a possible of misunderstanding if someone say it's lie, something is lie. So how mundane interpret that lie? Lie means not true. Not true means not exist. If the lie is not exist, how can it deceive you? Right. So if the lie is non-existing, and then how can the lie has the power, activity, or function that can deceive you? So if the lie exists, it is a functional. It is the relatively existing. And why it is the lie? The functioning has the activity is not necessary to be truly exist. The reflection of your image, your face in the mirror, so it is not true, but it is there when the mirror and your face contact. So the reflections of the face in the mirror is not physically touched with the mirror, not inside the mirror, not coming from the mirror. It is not transferred in the mirror. It cannot transfer from the mirror. It just happened to be exists as unreal. It is the lie. So that lie, it is exist. Lie is exist. Unreal is exist. So when the lie is not, not objective, not objectified or not objectively exists, lie cannot be stained. Lie is not going to stain with valid reasoning. When the logic comes near by the lie and the lie shy away, it disappears for a while. When you stop using logic, you just normally engage, it appears. Right? So like water in the mirage. So yeah. So the lie means it exists. So if the lie exists but not truly there where it appears, and then the truth is also not stand by itself. Its absence of lie is the truth. So where the lie is not, not standing objectively, the truth is also not standing objectively. Because the truth is in that nature of the lie. So in the Heart Sutras, is, even the five aggregates are empty of intrinsic existence. So the lie and the ultimate truth, both are absence of intrinsic existence, and both are relatively exist. So there is no, there is no kind of, difference in the validity of the existing of the truth and the lie. So they are like, two sides of the scale. When this exists, this exists. Yeah, sometimes, so when the ultimate truth and the lie, when you see it's just equal, how they rail is equal, not objectively existing equal, but that you don't need any logic or reasoning to prove ultimate truth is true. Now you need to prove the lie is not true. So the lie being proving unreal is revealing the ultimate truth. Right? Yeah, sometimes, when we think of the opposite things, like East and West, so it's just the existing of the East and West and the back of each other, mutually depending. But every opposite is like that, and I don't know, sometimes the heat and cold, they say, some people say there is no cold, there's only the heat. The absence of reducing the heat is what we call it cold, So which means, so what is the measuring? What is the what is that thing that you're measuring from the cold and heat? So are you measuring from the heat side and how much there is cold? Then probably you can say, yeah, there's only the heat. But you can name the cold by reducing the heat. So if you go beyond the measuring, the measurement is not standing in that heat, just, normally, that objectively, then even the heat is not really exists intrinsically. So if everything, the heat that you experience in your body, and what you can see is every time there is the heat, the less heat and less heat and less heat. Heat is still there because you're measuring from the heat. So that, I think, is pretty true in that, the refrigerators and the backside are always hot. So it's just extracting it, right? Extracting the heat out is the cold that you can find. So yeah, ultimate truth and conventional is, relatively existing, and the both are equally, So, and then if the equally they, relatively exist, and then why is one is not true, one is other true? So then Prasangics would say we are not really, we are not using any logic in reasoning to establish the ultimate is truly exist. We don't have any reason to prove that. So what we have reason is we are, we have reason to prove the lie is not true. Lie is the lie. And by that, you reveal the truth. We don't have to go, oh, this is the ultimate truth. I'm going to prove it. No. So we just simply point to the lie and saying, this is the lie. I know, I have revealed this is the lie. That is the ultimate truth. So they, so there is no lie independent. There is no ultimate truth independent. And then maybe people may think, then if you're not going after ultimate truth, proving it to truly exist by lying as a lie. So what is the, why you're so enthusiastically going after lie to revealing its lie, and then say, because the suffering is coming from, knowing lie as the real, conceiving or perceiving lie as the real is the cause of the suffering. It's not that we don't have any mental suffering from labeling ultimate truth as the truly existing. So both are not truly exist, but our suffering emotional is not coming from, not driven by and imposing ultimate truth as it truly exists.
I have a couple of questions. There's obviously useful lies. If I take the most obvious one, guru does not ultimately exist, but it's useful to have faith in a guru, right? We use guru. The guru, does guru have intrinsic existence, or is guru like everything else that is a construction and a useful construction? So first of all, it seems to me there are useful lies. It's useful to act as if gravity exists, for example. It may not ultimately exist, not the way we conceive it, but we know things, at least generally, are going to fall from trees, and there's certain exceptions like helium balloons floating up and so forth. But so there are useful truths. So if that's true, then do all lies cause suffering? That's one question. The other question I have, though, it's not a comfortable position to take, not as comfortable as the two truths. But if we take infinite regress, why are we just dismissing infinite regress? Is it because we just don't like the idea? I mean, it's not enough to say we don't like the idea. Doesn't make it true or false. Is there anything other than I don't like this idea of infinite regress that really we can dismiss it as not being valid, or can we say we don't know? Maybe there is infinite regress. The idea doesn't appeal to me, but maybe there is. Those are my two questions.
Yeah. I only remember the second question.
Okay. The first question had to do with suffering caused by lying, and that there are useful lies.
Suffering caused by lie caused by guru. That's what you mean.
Well, no. If guru is a construction, does not ultimately exist, but it does. It is an object of faith, and it is something we can use to propel us, presumably, to enlightenment. I mean, it's a legitimate path, is it not? So we can't just. Can we really just say lies cause suffering? I mean, there's useful lies, whether it's guru or gravity, or I'm sure a number of things. Even electricity, I don't know, they used to say, I don't know if they still say this, we don't really know why it works, but it works. We don't have to understand it. We can have theories, but they seem to work and they're useful, and we can plan certain things, how to connect things and make them work, because we believe this works, even though we don't know whether it's just an appearance, what it really is. It seems to repeat. I'm trying to make the argument here that there are useful lies, or we can call them lies. We can say there's an absence of evidence. They ultimately exist when we examine them, but they seem to serve a useful function, and we don't we wouldn't say of themselves they cause suffering, or at least it would be very hard to prove that. Of course, we could say gurus cause suffering when they don't behave in ways we expect them to behave, like if we observe what seems to be a lack of ethics and all that. Nonetheless, it's a useful means to have faith and to use as a yana, as a path.
Yeah. What else?
That's the first one. Now you forgot the second one. The second one had to do with regress. Can we just eliminate that possibility just because it's uncomfortable? We don't want to believe it. It seems like too much to believe. Those are the two issues I'm bringing up.
Are we going to see the movie?
That's the movie. We're watching the movie. You say we're watching the
movie. I think you're trying to say the story on the lie. I'm trying to define the lie. So that's the difference. So we are saying what is the lie? Is something relatively exist, but it cannot be understood as, truly exist. And what is the example? The reflection of the face in the mirror. Yeah, it is relatively exist. And it existing like ultimate truth, but it is not true as it appears. So there's the benefit from knowing, although it exists, but it's not true as it appears to you. Then there's no reason to make the story and how many lies are white, how many lies are black, how many lies are, like zebra, white and half black, half light. So it doesn't matter. So everything, the conventional reality, things that we, things that we label, things that we know, and the things that we identified. So which means anything in any identity, any kind of label that appears is not true as it appears. And the second question is, we say the infinite regrets is untenable things. We are not saying we don't like infinite regrets, so we don't accept. so and the case dismissed. So because we don't like it. So say that if the I consciousness is the proof of I consciousness exists, which means another thing is the proof of you have I consciousness, the proof of I remember that I have I consciousness, the proof of me knowing that I have consciousness, I consciousness. It is not relying on the second I consciousness, is not relying on the air consciousness, tongue consciousness, the body consciousness. This was saying, if the me to know I have I consciousness has to be relying on the air consciousness, and that is the infinite, not making sense to you. This air consciousness, no idea that I have I consciousness seeing it. And that second I consciousness, that today's I consciousness is not perceived by the yesterday I consciousness. Right? So this thing, in this way, the infinite regrets. So then I cannot really have conviction of I have seen something, because to know the I consciousness, I have I consciousness, I have to rely on air consciousness. Then the second says, how do air consciousness know that I have I consciousness? Oh, nose consciousness says. And nose consciousness, how do you know you have air consciousness and eye consciousness? Oh, the tongue consciousness. So in this way, the infinite regrets mean that it's untenable. It's not making sense. But you can repeat many times, but it's not making sense to you. So the proof of that, I have eye consciousness. How do you know you have eye consciousness? Because I have seen something. And how do you know? When do you know that you have seen something through eye consciousness? Then I say, I have recollections. When I look at the green, that the very moment of the experience of the green is the condition that I can recall. So I don't need anything other than the experiencing of the green. So that's the very simple, yeah. The Prasangika school says that the mindfulness school, it says, that the very reason that you remember that you have seen the green is, is granted, it's blessed by the reflexive awareness. Without that, you cannot have recollection of the green. Without that, you cannot have recollection of having seen the green. And the Prasangika school says, thank you, I don't need that, Just by experiencing the green is enough for recall that I have seen the green. You have to follow the logic,
I thought
Yeah.
infinite regress was not what you presented here, going from one sense, like eye consciousness to nose consciousness. My understanding of infinite regress is there's a watcher of the watcher of the watcher of the watcher, like infinite levels of watchers.
Then turn into vulture.
And
Going
I
above
would-
and above.
I would say if I were to try and prove that might exist or give at least some evidence of that, I would say omniscience, clairvoyance, clairaudience means someone is tapping into a higher level of watcher than the individual self. I would say that is a good, maybe it's not absolute proof, but it's an indication that may be possible. That there are maybe successful unfoldments of selves at higher and higher levels, and that a person who is exercising clairaudience or clairvoyance is able to identify with a higher order of a self or a beingness. That wouldn't also eliminate the possibility of interdependence. I don't think that's mutually exclusive.
Okay. Yeah.
Wouldn't the whole Chittamatra school premise though depend on that watcher being intrinsic? And so the idea of like a continuously intrinsic watcher and watcher and watcher, that's what makes it untenable, that there's an infinite amount of intrinsic beings. And I think that's what the problem would be.
Yeah, for example, if I stay, for me, I have for example, there's the cook and the many people. So for me to remember I had a breakfast this morning, I have to told by one person, and that person to remember me he has to inform by another person. And then finally, the one who cooked, right? He has to say, "Oh, Gijel already had a breakfast," so that I have to wait for me to remember that I had a breakfast. So I have to wait. He has to. So for him to inform me, he has to wait for another person, and for him to remember for the cook to inform him. So that I cannot, right after the breakfast, I cannot remember because I have to wait.
This is almost like you could say a series of beings who have dementia.
That's why
And
you
the
are
top
not.
one has a less order of dementia than the bottom one.
Yeah, that's why I want to point at you in, salesman. So you don't have, you don't care about the buyers. You only care about how to sell it. So just saying something is like trying to make sense of it, So how this logic is playing, So we have to go after that, the logic, where it's pointing at. We are all saying, "Oh, that was quite good, and I want to listen to this one." In the supermarket, I want this one. How about this? Nothing comes in the lab. When they keep saying that, you have to follow the logic, the ways the logic is pointing at, and then that means this. That's why I'm saying the best example for me to remember I had a breakfast. I have to wait for the person to inform me. And that person to inform me, wait for another person. So how long it takes for me to remember that I had a breakfast. So that is infinite regress. That's not making sense. So just by having had a breakfast is enough for me to remember I had a breakfast. I don't need to, go through all these people. So that's what Prasangika school say. If each consciousness has to be perceived by another consciousness, then that is infinite regress. And then if this is not making, you understand that, and the second one says consciousness is, reflecting or perceiving itself. And that also my knowledge school says, we are not saying that. Consciousness seeing itself, we are not saying it. Consciousness is the one part of the consciousness, emerged from that consciousness and looking at itself. Then we say, oh, that's, quite, the quite an online cell. That's, this is just total fake. So for me to remember it, my experience is enough to recall. So the Baba Vivek says, just experience the object is enough to remember the subject. And then we say, oh, that my knowledge school is fake. But why they insist? And then we think of that, closer look. Oh, there's the fear. The mind knowledge school, they don't want to fall into nihilism. They don't want to say or think like Prasangika school. They think, you can only understand the illusion like not truly an object side. Don't talk about the subject. The consciousness, if that's not true, then you have no object to faith. So no object to, the object of the refuge. Buddha Dharma Sangha is everything is unreal. So that is the minority school, push them in the faking, the self-reflexive. This has only experienced the non-dualistic, but it is not convincing to you. And it only convinces to you when you meditate on emptiness. And the yogic experience will, obviously kind of, makes you see. Now there's only consciousness, nothing but consciousness. So that's a very, very comfortable for the mind on the school. We have to understand what is the condition for them to, asserting the reflexive awareness. Even the logic is invalid, that you keep pushing to that. So because, they don't want to fall nihilism. Yeah. That's very good. Yeah, that's very good. Present the opponent's positions. Logan, you have any questions?
I did have one, clarification. So going back to what you said, so where the Chitta Mantra says consciousness exists without the need of an object, essentially, is the perception. I guess, does Prasangika then say that consciousness exists independent on an object, and that is why consciousness is also like empty in that way? Like, I guess I'm not sure if that totally makes sense, but like,
in the Prasangika school, the I consciousness is no different from the I sense faculties. I sense faculties is no different from the element, the internal elements. So therefore, I consciousness also not independently active, not independently exist from the internal element. So therefore, there's no I consciousness. The intrinsic is not inherent in each of the elements, not in the motion, not in the heat, not in the wind. It is not apart from wind, not apart from the moisture and the heat. So they are not apart from it, it's not identical with that, it's not inherent in them, but relatively, collectively. So there's the I consciousness, the functioning, to see things. So now say, so what is the I consciousness? And then we say I consciousness is the whole of the being, seeing the colors, the shape. And that I consciousness, what is the collection, or the composite? The composite is there's the energy that, connect to the internal elements. And then there is the kind of layer of the faculties. And through that energy is perceiving color and shape and like that. So therefore, the composite within there, and not only the element, there's the energy. The energy is the rise or raise from, the kind of what we call settled consciousness. So one center, the energy that raise and goes with, collaborate with the internal element, and then by contacting outer element, and a new object happens. Like, I think best be example, you always say use the bell. There is empty space, and then with the tongue of the bell, and then the whole kind of, with the cover of that bell. And when you move it, so the sound comes. Sound is not pre-exist somewhere in the not pre-exist somewhere, or sound is not coming from other side in interest in the bell, but it's whole together, and new object happen. In this way, the color, smell, taste that we see, we experience the object. It is not out there, pre-exist somewhere, or not pre-exist inside. The internal element, and then the rays of the subtle energy through the internal element, and the faculties, the contact with outer, and then new things happen. So that's called all of them has no certainty. There's no kind of essence by themselves. It just creates there. So I use the superimposition of, kind of, there's one braid here, there's one single braid, and from there you cannot physically separate, or this is color, this is taste, this smell, this is textures. There's nothing from there. But it reaches, when it contact with eye, nose, tongue, body, and then for the eye, the color, for the nose, the smell, for the tongue, the taste, for the body, the textures. There are 5 objects. By experience, we can call there's the 5. So if this 5 is coming from the braid, jump into the 5 things goes to here. No, from the braid side, there's nothing. There's no separate thing. Because of your door to see that the different door, from the eye and nose experience, it's a separate object happen. Each of the objects, the separations are illusion-like. It is not pre-exist somewhere. It is not coming from somewhere, transferred from somewhere, right? So this is exactly when you look at contact with the mirror, the reflection appears. So you can also, this is the part of the glass, or this is coming, it is in the glass, or it attached to the glass, or it is somewhere transferred into the glass. There's nothing. So that's called relatively existing. So this can be 2, this can be many. So one reflections, and by looking at another angle, you can see another shape, another color. So these are, what we call, it is conditioned by, the composite phenomena, but the component is the one that.
Component is one.
Yeah. Component is the one. The component is illusion-like, is magical-like happen. So this is and this is how in the sensual world, and the mental world is more illusion-like, more illusion than the sensual world. You know, so the mental world is like the relations, and then short and tall, big and like lower and medium, and these kind of whole projections. Those mental worlds are much illusion, much unreal than sensual. Sensory, at least we can experience some. Those are obvious to you, and it you can see today, you can see tomorrow. The mental worlds instantly changing. They're not really. They don't have any steady or certainty in there. So that we are living in that sensory world and the mental world. So the both are illusion-like. So those objects seeing intrinsically and truly there is samsara. And when you understand all of them, the relatively existing, nothing truly exists, and it opens the gate of the liberation. That's what they say. Yeah. Chanjusem Rinpoche, Maje Banda Jeju, Keba Nyamba, Mevanya, Kone Kondo Pevasho, Tonye Tawa Rinpoche, Maje Banda Jeju, Keba Nyamba, Mevanya, Kone Kondo Pevasho, Tonye Tawa Rinpoche, Maje Banda Jeju, Keba Nyamba, Mevanya, Kone Kondo Pevasho, Pama Simjen Tamje, Dedan Tenju, Ngendro Tamje, Tado Ton, Chanjusem Bakana, Sushu Betela Gunja, Molum Jojo, Karerabe Vishima, the Pendant de Woman, Jereson, Tindinya, Shabeside,
May the precious body mind not yet born arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. May the precious mind realizing emptiness not yet born arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. Due to all these merits, may all Father and Mother sentient beings have all happiness, and may all the lower realms be empty forever. Wherever there are bodhisattvas, may all their prayers be accomplished immediately. In the sacred land surrounded by snow mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. Powerful humans tending Yatso,
Thank you very much. Thank you.